This is a complex topic on pricing right now. And the challenge is, how do we, what we've been saying at Keeping Current Matters, and I think is true about this market, is absolutely true, is we're in a decelerating market, meaning we're seeing less appreciation and we're in an appreciating market for home prices. So how could that be? And it feels like coming out of the frenzy, something that sold last month probably selling for a little bit less this month. How do you make sense of all that?
So our competition, our direct competition, Redfin, Zillow, and all these other guys, Realtor.com, they're spending money here. Well, where we win is if we go into the niches, into the long tail keywords, right? So here, I wanted to show you that. Let me go back to this, because as soon as the ad pops up, I click on it.
We are live. Hey, welcome everybody to another episode of the Market Update with David Childers from Keeping Current Matters, where he brings the data, the research to the forefront to dispel any of those clickbait type of headlines that we see everywhere. This way you can make informed decisions, not only for your clients, but for your marketing, and you can sound like a knowledgeable professional in your market. David Childers, how are you, my friend?
I'm wonderful. Doing good, Johnny. It's good to be back. We were out a couple weeks ago. I was traveling, but yeah, a lot happening. Still, reeling a lot of folks from the shift in the market. We'll talk about that, but doing well. Glad to be back with you.
Yeah, man. So it's funny because sometimes I'm like, wow, we're meeting again. But we did miss a meeting there, and it's like, wow, it still feels like just time is going by so fast, right?
Yeah, that's for sure.
Soon enough, I know with you too, the fall will be upon us. But this time of year, where are we? August. I've always noticed like July was a little bit slow. It was like a little bump down in July. Everybody get out of school, going on vacations, probably packing up, going to college, whatever they were doing. In August, there was a little bump up in sales. Now, I've been seeing some headlines that, for the second consecutive month, home sales are down. So
existing home sales, yeah.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about affordability, prices, those kind of good things. What do you see happening out there? What are the fun headlines that you're seeing?
Well, there's so much. I was telling you earlier, we surveyed a lot of agents, some KCM members, some not. What are the biggest things they're getting? Questions that came back: are prices going to drop? Is the market going to crash? Will I lose money if I buy now? Affordability is a big topic, a big topic. And I would say to folks joining too, whether on Facebook or here, what are the things that you're hearing, or, in addition to that, and certainly builders, that's been a big topic, or builders building. So we can tackle any number of those, because I think sometimes Johnny, the panic outweighs the fact in a lot of cases. And I'm not saying there aren't things we need to be concerned about in our business and things that are very, very serious. We can talk about those. But some people get so good at reading between the lines, they forget to read the lines. That's the reality of the business in the market that we're in right now. So my hope is bring you a little bit of perspective on that, on what the information tells us right now.
I think people have to be careful in that particular area, not to get analysis paralysis, right? Yep. Because I say it probably every episode that we do together. It doesn't matter whether the market's up or down. Closings happen in every market. You just have to determine who the agent is at that closing.
Yeah,
right.
I mean,
if it's going to be you might have to do a little bit extra work.
And affordability and the rise in prices, and homes really. And I'll let the cat out of the bag. I mean, homes are statistically, when you look across the country, unaffordable right now, and I'll break that down. But you get into a place where you think, okay, well, if that's the case, nobody's going to buy, nobody's going to sell, and it's sort of there's a two-part element to this. What's my mindset, and then what am I doing to give good advice to those I'm working with? Two things that are very different, that I think we need to pay attention to. So
yeah.
maybe
You
we
always
start with
have good
prices.
stuff, David. What slides do you have? I know you always break out slides that I can't create, and they look great. So you got great graphics people there.
Yeah, they do a killer job. The KCM research team finds all these topics and puts them together. So here's what I would set up and talk about. And this is to me, Johnny, and to those listening, this is a complex topic on pricing right now. And the challenge is, how do we, what we've been saying at Keeping Current Matters, and I think is true about this market, is absolutely true, is we're in a decelerating market, meaning we're seeing less appreciation and we're in an appreciating market for home prices. So how could that be? And it feels like coming out of the frenzy, something that sold last month probably selling for a little bit less this month. How do you make sense of all that? And so that's what I want to kind of break down, the price element for that. So when we talk about pricing, let me set this up. Pricing is always measured on an annualized basis in housing. You can certainly say year over year, month over month. We've been in a 2-year window where we've said, hey, prices grew month over month. That's not normal. And you could measure it that way, I guess. But it's typically not what we think about in housing. We think about yearly appreciation. What does that look like? And so I want to give you a little bit of breakdown in that, maybe a couple of ways to explain this to folks that are you're working with. First one, I would start at this quote from Mark Zandi from Moody's. And Mark is sort of I would call him a pessimistic economist. Generally looking at things that, not glass half full, so to speak. He said, I don't think national house prices will decline in a meaningful way, but there will be some price declines across the country. So what's he saying there? There's not a case right now to be made for national home price depreciation like we saw back in 2008. And Johnny, we've talked a lot about it, but there will be some markets that are overheated, have been overheated, that may see some price declines. That's becoming very, very clear in that. Somebody asked the other day, like, well, what if somebody bought a house 2 months ago and, they weren't really concerned with what they pay. They were more interested in getting the home. If they had to sell it right now, would they lose money? Probably so. Probably so. And I would say in any market, if you buy a home and sell it in a month or two, you're probably going to lose money. And so taking that and making sense of it, how do we take that depreciating market plus appreciation and make sense of it? So we'll go here to Black Knight's latest monthly mortgage monitor. Annual home price growth dropped by nearly 2 percentage points. It's the greatest single month slowdown on record since at least the early 70s. So you're seeing price growth drop, but not price appreciation drop. Here's the kind of the kicker in this. That slowdown was record breaking. Home price growth would need to decelerate at this pace for 6 more months to drive annual appreciation back to 5%, a rate more in line with long run averages. So what does that mean? I would expect to see more headlines, more things talking about home price growth dropping, meaning we're seeing less appreciation in the market, which, if we're honest, we saw too much over the last couple of years, white hot market, really unhealthy price growth. And we're getting back to a place that's going to be more in line with what we've seen historically. So be prepared for that price growth is dropping right now. Now, here's the visual that sort of explains that, Johnny. And I think it does a good job. This shows the slow in appreciation, but not depreciation. Mm-hmm. So this is June, and before anybody on here says, well, that's June, doesn't matter. Here we are, second half of August. I agree. But look for the trend. What will July show? A little bit less price growth. What will August show? A little bit less price growth. That's the market that we're in right now, sort of normalizing. And if you think about that, okay, how can we be in less price growth, but homes are still appreciating on an annualized basis? Great, question there. And all the while, experts are raising their home price forecast for this year. And if you look at this is a good example of it. You look at Fannie, Freddie, all the ones that we follow at Keeping Current Matters. Outside of MBA, everybody's up-leveled their forecast for prices this year. This is for 2022 home price appreciation, the forecast for it anywhere from 9 to 16%. I don't understand why MBA is at 2%. I don't think that's going to be accurate this year. They're sort of the outlier there. And Fannie would be the outlier at 16% as well. Somewhere, if you look at the averages, sorry about that, about 10% of appreciation this year in residential real estate. Why is that? And this is a slide that we've used many, many times. So I'm going to pull them down for a second so I can see you, Johnny. But if you think about that, you think about home price appreciation. We're starting to see less appreciation, but forecasters up-leveled their year forecast for this year. So let's take an average example. You buy a $100,000 house, and by the end of the year, it's worth $110,000 or $115,000. And yet intra-month, maybe it drops down to $114,000 or $112,000. That's sort of what we're seeing right now. We're seeing less appreciation year over year, but still positive appreciation in homes across this country. And I don't think there's a case right now to be made for depreciation outside of some markets and some scenarios. Back in 2008, the average in this country was about 20% depreciation nationally, nowhere near anything like that.
Yeah, interesting. That is really interesting data and to take a look at. And I think some of it has to do with, the uncertainty, what's going on in the economy and, what's going, not just the economy, but also what's happening in the ecosystem of the real estate realm and the mortgage realm, right?
Yeah.
Because when rates went from 4 point whatever to 5 point whatever, that outpriced people from, when people are looking, I've sold real estate for 20 years. If you're pre-approved for 500,000, you're not looking for a $400,000 house. Right.
And if you have to go back and start looking at a $400,000 house, that's not fun.
They don't even compare. So now all of a sudden, that choice was kind of taken from them saying, hey, listen, no longer can you get that $500,000 house. You're at 450 now. Right. Mm-hmm. So there's been, I think, a little coming to Jesus, a little bit of correction that happened and in the market. And I think we're starting to see that. It's interesting. I did a presentation in a couple of weeks, actually, the beginning of August, I believe it was August 1st, 2nd. And one of the things I used was I used the generational trends report from NAR for a couple pieces. And one of those particular pieces was multi-generational sales. And roughly 15% of our market is generational trends. Is generational sales, right? Multi-generational homes. So what is that?
Meaning folks living under the same roof,
right?
Grandparents are living with you, things like that.
I don't think, when people say the riches are in the niches, this is a perfect time, I think, to niche down. Right. It's a perfect time to get involved, I think, in other areas. Maybe it would be probate, because it doesn't matter how good or how bad the market is. People die every day. Right. That's not going away. That's never going away. So maybe now's the time for you to stop being a generalist and start to specialize in something. Maybe it's time to start looking at that generational and position yourself as a generational home expert. Right. Because of 15% of the market, I'll take that. Right.
Yeah.
I'll gladly
listen, Johnny, you're exactly right. My folks right now, I was down with them last week. They're getting ready to sell their house. They're in their 80s and need to do something different. And those decisions have to happen, right? That's going to happen. People have to buy. The job transfer or things like that's not going to be put on hold based on, whatever we think about the market right now. So those will absolutely continue to happen. So,
yeah, market's going to go up, market's going to go down, but don't forget that 47% of the sales that are happening revolve around life events.
Yep.
Right.
So if you think about prices, that is the bottom line. Folks wondering, are prices going to drop? There's not a case right now for price drops like that. And that brings up this question of crash. One that there are people out there talking about real estate crash and foreclosures have increased. That kind of hasn't stopped, but I think having the facts about it are critically important. If you scan the articles, I'll tell you this. Besides, if you think about reputable people that are out there talking about real estate, you really can't find somebody talking about a crash, and they kind of, like, well, if this were to happen and that were to happen, then maybe, but not, directly in it. But there was something interesting that I started to find in our research team brought to the surface. There were four things that have come up on this topic that you want to be educated on in the world, and that is employment, lending, foreclosures, and ultimately inventory. So having your head up saying, okay, what's happening in the employment market? What's going on with lending? What's happening with foreclosures? And what's happening, with inventory? We're seeing inventory rise right now. Many people saying it's 4 months a buyer's market, is 6 months the traditional thought of it a buyer's market. Are we going to see price decreases based on that? And I want to give a little bit of context to a couple of those issues and some really good graphics that the team has built, maybe to help you understand those a little bit better. So we start off with employment. Let's start there. This will look at 2008 as compared to where we are today. Matter of fact, the blue bar wraps up July of this year. The red is the time during the Great Recession, and it took 9 years for us to get back to where we were in employment in the Great Recession. We just got back to where we were coming out of COVID. Why is that important? Well, for 6 years, the unemployment rate in this country was over 6% following the Great Recession, which was a contributor to what we experienced in housing. We don't see anything like that right now, right? We're back 2 years later to where we were when the pandemic started. Oh, by the way, there are more jobs out there for the number of people that are out looking, and that outlook is good. Very, very different. But we want to understand the labor market relative to how that could play an impact. Very, very different than what we saw back in the housing crisis. If you think about this, and then kind of jumping over to lending standards, this is the Mortgage Credit Availability Index, and we've talked about that before. The higher this index, the easier it is to get a loan. And you see back in the housing bubble, very, very easy to get a loan. What's happened the last couple of years is lending standards have actually gotten tighter. It's gotten harder to get a loan, due to just a simple fact of what, servicers are looking for, or those that are bundling mortgages looking for in the mortgage market. And so you say, okay, what does that mean when we have a better qualified borrower? Well, it leads to less foreclosures. That's ultimately where that kind of ball rolls to, and we've seen exactly that in this country since the end of kind of 2011. We've seen less foreclosures in this country every single year. Don't even worry about 2020 and 2021, because those are anomaly years with moratoriums on foreclosures. But when you have, I'll go back to this real quick, a better qualified borrower, and they can repay the loan, they don't fall into a foreclosure. Now, it's a fact of our business, and we don't, it's sort of a morbid topic. We don't want that to happen to anyone. But you're seeing that trend in the business. Now, let's take this a step further. This was shocking when I read it on foreclosures from Adam Data. So the second quarter of this year, only about 214,000 homeowners were facing a possible foreclosure in the second quarter of 2022. That's just 0.4% of the 58.2 million outstanding mortgages in the U.S. 0.4%. Of those facing foreclosure, about 195,000, or 91%, had at least some equity built up in their home. So not only is the percent of foreclosures extremely low, the overwhelming majority have equity in their homes and could sell them. And if you think about this I was with a mortgage company a few weeks back, and for servicers, their toleration for default's about 1%. We sit at about 0.4% right now, about 40% of 1%. Not even where they would feel okay. back in the housing crisis, the default rate got up to, inside of portfolios, around 14%. So nothing anywhere near what we saw back then. And I think keeping that in mind is critically important. Or maybe having some of these things, when somebody says, well, aren't we about to see a bunch of foreclosures hit the market? I'd ask that person, what are you talking about? There's just not a case to be made for it.
Yeah.
If we wrap up here, I'll bring the slides down here in just a second. On inventory is still historically low. This is from the Calculated Risk blog. August 12th, same week compared 2021, up 30% in inventory. But if we look back same week in 2020, if we look back same week in 2019, we're still below inventory in this country than where we were, in the last year. And so we're coming out of this severe undersupply in housing. And the bottom line, now you could say, certainly in my market, we're in a buyer's market now, but the majority of markets in this country are still in a seller's market. Now, I would argue sellers have certainly pulled back. Buyers have pulled back. Sellers need to get right on their pricing in some cases. Mm-hmm. But when you start to look at those things, it paints a very clear picture that a crash in real estate is not something that has merit relative to the argument of this is where it would come from.
Yeah, do me a favor. Bring those slides up and show me that foreclosure one again. It was the first one that showed the declining bar graph.
Yeah, hang on just a second. I'll bring it up. There you go.
There you go, y'all. This right here makes great content. That right there. You go talk about this one right here and put yourself as a little green screen, because I know that's what you guys do. Okay, I'm good there. So I think it's funny because I in my area, I'm seeing both things happen. One is I'm still seeing properties, because there's still a lack of properties, sell for over asking. A condo that I sold for $219,000. I sold one for $199 and one for $219. Maybe I got $229 for it. Just closed. It went to the market at $299, and it closed at $326 or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. So they still went over. But then I'm seeing some people with that are, if you have the right property, that still happen. And then there's another property, and it's a 4-unit, but it's got some quirks to it. And they want to sign, you know what I mean? They got their friends are on the leases, right? Their family members are on the lease, and they're all just signed. So it's not even like they've had long term, right? And so there's some funny things there. But they're asking for all the money and then some. And I just don't see the justification in it. So the offers are coming in on that property now, and they're not going over, they're actually coming in under. Right. So I see some people getting a little brazen, but I do believe that sellers need to agents need to as well coach their sellers to become honest in the pricing, because it isn't 3 months ago, it isn't 6 months ago, it isn't a year ago. So if you're expecting to come on at 400 and get 490, those days may have sailed. Right. Mm-hmm. So the best advice I can give to any agent right now: price the property right. Price it where you want to be, price it right. If you want 450, price it at 450. Don't price it at 400 trying to get everybody to bid it up, because that might not happen right now. And that was happening, right? That was happening. But it's good to see the number of foreclosures on that downward cycle and such, because there's so much doom and gloom out there about, the foreclosures are coming, or BlackRock or Black Falcon or Black whoever is buying up all the properties. They always have, though.
Well, at the end of the day, no matter how much they buy, the more they buy is because they believe it's a good investment.
Yeah.
So you can't, we can certainly say they're buying it up and folks should be able to buy those. And I hear that. But the reason they're buying it is they believe it's a good investment. Let's not miss that point. That's
the flip side to that is they can dump them all on the market at one time, and it just goes like that, which I don't think they would, because that would make me a conspiracy theorist. And I don't want to be labeled that way, but that is a possibility. Somebody said to me recently, said, "Man, why are you being so negative?" And I'm like, I'm not being negative. I'm a cautious person. When you bring up something to me, I'm going to say, this is my job, right? This is what I do as a CEO of a company. Did we think about this, this, and this, right? Did we think about that? What could happen if this happens? It's not negative. It's being cautious, right?
Yeah.
But I do think that we need to have those conversations with our clients. There's no doom and gloom from anything you just showed me, from anything that I see in my local market, from people that I talk with around the country. Yes, things may be staying on the market for 18 days, 21 days. Maybe the property wasn't priced right. Maybe you didn't have good photos. Maybe, you know what I mean? There's multiple different reasons. A buddy of mine went on a showing and there was cat poop on one of the beds.
Yeah.
Right. And it was just like, does anybody have any pride here? Went on another showing. I went with him on this one. And they had mice traps in the basement, which you know what I mean? It's New England. Everybody got a mouse in your house. And but you don't have 6 or 7 of them. Right? Mm-hmm. All dead. Clean up your mess, right? So if you got weird problems like that going on, yeah, maybe you got to take a look at the property. But if you have a normal property that's in a desirable area, it is going to sell.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to sell for more money now than it did 5 years ago. That's for a fact.
Yep, that's right. So, I think it's all about price right now. I was actually working with our team this morning on a couple of things we were doing on a seller's blog, looking at the reasons somebody should sell in this market and what's happening for sellers. But I think it's all trumped by pricing it right. And we're coming out of a market where, the pricing strategy for most was what the house next door sell for and add 50 grand to it and see if we can get it, And
that's
so
I
think being diligent in pricing is certainly our job now. So let's talk about affordability for a second. I think this is one of the biggest issues out there right now.
I think it's huge. I mean, and it trickles all the way down to your first time renter.
Yeah. So let's talk about this. And I'll bring up a slide here real quick. This is the Housing Affordability Index that NAR produces. We used it, Johnny. We've talked about this over the last couple of years when we've done this call. And you see this. Houses are less affordable, unaffordable, whatever you want to say, than anytime going back to 1990. Okay. Now, before we, I'd pump the brakes on any kind of Armageddon, relative to affordability, that dotted line across there is 100. That is a statistically, even market, meaning the average earner in this country can buy an average home. We're slightly below that at 98.5 in that index. We've been in a time where we've been well above that, but affordability, no doubt, is a big issue. I'm going to pull this down for a second.
Mm-hmm.
The reason for that, the reason I'm going to pull it down, because I want to talk about the 3 things that affect affordability and how do you give good advice given that. So affordability is based upon 3 things: prices of homes, it's based upon interest rates, and it's based upon wages. So if you want to say, where is this market going relative to affordability, you have to be able to communicate effectively. What do you believe about those 3 things? What do you believe about prices? What do you believe about interest rates? What do you believe about wages? I'll give you my perspective on that. Prices, we're entering into a more normalized market. I don't see prices shooting up 20% like we saw last year. Matter of fact, most have said going into next year, 3 or 4% in price appreciation in this country. All right, interest rates. There's a lot of evidence, I'm going to say, that interest rates have peaked, and that's coming from multiple areas. One is inflation under control. What are forecasters saying? What's the market saying? Now, let's hope they're right. I'm not saying we're out of the woods. Not here to say that, but I'm saying there's evidence to say interest rates have peaked, and when we get through inflation, we should see a little bit lower interest rate. And then what about wages? Well, the general overall economic lookout is that people will continue to earn more. There are more available jobs right now, and there are folks to fill them. That is generally the case. So I don't think it's all doom and gloom relative to affordability, but I think it is critically important right now to look at what are all the financing options. And I'm not suggesting anybody buy a home with the anticipation of refinancing. I believe that's mismanagement if we were coaching somebody to do that. I think there are options to look at things that may work that maybe people didn't look at before. You may have to expand your search right now, right? If you want to live in town, you might have to look at living 15 or 20 or 30 minutes outside of a town to buy something that you can afford.
Which to
You
me
know?
is brilliant advice, because you want to buy in up and coming areas because you'll see your appreciation faster, in my opinion.
Right, right. You may see more opportunity for fixer uppers, for people to go in and put sweat equity in a house. So I think there is opportunity, but it's dealing with this affordability in a way that helps people make wise decisions during this time.
You might have to trade in that $700 a month car and get yourself a Ford Escape for $295 and delete the DoorDash app from your phone. I mean, let's be real about things, right? We can sit here and say, oh, that's not affordable. Man, if we take a look at our bills and where we're spending some of our money, the reason it's not affordable is because we're mismanaging our own funds, right? I've looked at my own, I'm talking about my own finance. Get rid of that damn DoorDash.
No, I hear you. Yeah. No, you look up and you go, gosh, we're spending a lot of money.
A lot of money, right? But you think about my parents' generation, probably your parents' generation too. I mean, they drove used cars most of the time. There was only, if there was ever a new car, it was one new car every 5 or 7 years, right?
Right.
My dad always drove the used car, but they were frugal, right? We didn't eat sushi. It just didn't exist, right? We didn't get DoorDash delivered on Wednesday. We ate a ham sandwich. It was just the way that it is. So we're in a different culture now, of course. But I mean, affordability, sure, the houses are more expensive. Everything's more expensive. Our wages need to go up too. But at the same respect, you can make things work. Buy a 3-family if you have to, right?
Yep.
Realistically, buy a 3-family. I have friends of mine who are my age who are, in theory, starting over, if you would. They've gone through divorce, kids are raised now and everything. It's like, okay, this time's about me. I'm buying a 3-family. It's going to pay for itself, and I always got a place to land.
Yeah. Right.
So, priorities may change. You may not be able to get the 5-bedroom home in Breckenridge or Brantford Farms or whatever like that. Then you got to take a look at that and be real, I think, or keep your clients' expectations in real. I used to say this is my favorite line to people. I hope I get it right. I haven't said it in years because I haven't sold a house in years. You can have value, price, or you can have location, price, or amenities, but you can only have 2.
Yeah.
Which 2 do you want, right? Because if you get the amenities that you want at the price you want, it's not going to be the location. That's going to be that what you were talking about, the half hour out, maybe, right? 20 minutes out. If you get the amenities you want and the location you want, surely won't be the price that you want, right? So you have to take a look at that. You got your price, you got your amenities, you got your location. You can have 2, not all 3.
Right.
If you can have all 3, then money's not an object to you, right? But that was one of my favorite lines that I would tell people. And it really set the bar, because they'd be like, oh, I want to live in Bedford. I want a 4-bedroom home, 2-car garage, all these things, 3,000 square feet. When I showed them it was 500,000, they were thinking about a different town.
Yep.
Right? Oh, well, in Goffstown, I can get that. Well, not anymore. Right. But man, David, let me tell you, I showed my son yesterday. There was a house that recently closed for $749,000. And I said, Derek, when I got out of the business, I was selling these things at $389, $349 all day long, $389. Never would I ever thought they would have went over 400. Right. Now $729. And I'm like, wow, imagine. So it's affordable to somebody.
That's right.
Affordable to somebody. You got to understand that as a real estate agent, so you can tailor your message and hone in your message and get with the right people. And that's why having this kind of data is so important, because by standing out with this data, by using it in videos. David, did you know that Cisco says this, by 2022, which we're in 2022 now, 79% of the data delivered to your mobile device will be video, and 82% of the global internet traffic will be video. Now, that also includes Amazon Prime, Netflix, and those kind of things, right? But also includes social media, because when you take a look at the social medias, YouTube and TikTok are video only. Instagram and Facebook have gone video centric. What are you left with? Right.
Yeah.
So make your videos with this stuff. I'm sure you'll start to see a better engagement in your videos than just always talking about, the doom and gloom, or telling that negative story about a real estate agent, or real estate. I mean, these are things that ego might want to be saying, but give the consumer what the consumer wants, because they are worried that when they go out and they do a consumer index on on confidence, the confidence index.
Right.
They're asking the consumer. They're not asking you, the real estate agent.
Right.
Nobody, I'll be honest with you, nobody cares what the real estate agent's opinion is. What matters is what the general public's opinion is, right? And when you can tailor into that general public's opinion, now how do you stand out? How many people are in your MLS? I've talked to people recently that have 60,000, 40,000, 30,000, and I can tell you that the majority of them are probably spouting off the same message. It's a very small amount of people.
Right.
Stand out and be different. Put out this data. Put out this data. You can take, I just took screenshots. David will share the slides with you if you email him at david@keepingcurrentmatters.com.
Yeah.
And then you can take a picture of you in Canva, just a picture of you like this in front of the graph saying, I'm going to explain this to you in 2 paragraphs. Now, there you go. There's your social post or a blog, right? You can really link it to another blog where you explain it. When they land on there, they're pixelated so they can be retargeted. You can send it out in a newsletter. You can create the blog, like I mentioned. You can do a Google announcement with it. Heck, while you're doing all this, might as well do a video at the same time explaining it. So when they land there, they're watching a video. Now you get content for YouTube. You get content for TikTok. You get content for Facebook and Instagram. You get content for all of them, and you're gonna look different than all the other people that aren't talking about this, that show up with their bad cologne or their cheap perfume and their bracelets and their fancy cars saying, market's great. Well, why? Because you said so, right? Now, all of a sudden you have data, you show up with somebody, you can have this in your buyer package or your seller package and say, listen, I'm the most knowledgeable real estate agent in the area. Here's the facts, right? Anyways. How we can give this stuff to people for free for 14, is it 14 days?
Yeah, you can go to trykcm.com and get it free for 14 days. So
yeah, I hope you all take advantage of it. I really do.
Check it out. Email me if you want the slides, David at Keeping Current Matters. Happy to get them to you. And more than anything, get the message out there. Use this to, like you said, Johnny, to make a video, to do something to educate folks.
That's it. Be different, because the consumer wants video. B, the platforms want video. C, people want a real answer, not the Washington Post or the USA Today headlines that's like, market crashes for 2 consecutive months in a row. I ain't seen a market crash in this country anywhere this year. Real quick, we got to go. Email sent.
All right. Sounds good.
Awesome, Eric. Hey, everybody, go to trykcm.com, email David at keepingcurrentmatters.com if you want the slides. Anyways, it's a great product. It's less than a cup of coffee a day. It's $30 a month. It's not even 30, it's $29.99, right? You all spend more than that at lunch every single day. I know you're drinking those martinis. So get the information. It's going to help you stand out and look professional in this oversaturated market. And I can promise you that the majority of your competition is not doing this. Go to trykcm.com. I'm Johnny Moe. David Childers, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Take care, Johnny.